Hello there and welcome to my garden. This is the first of a few gardening videos I will do from time to time as I work through the seasons and different plants and different environments here in my garden. But what I want to bring to you today is considering potting mediums, your composts, and in particular minimising use or removing use of peat. And what I've been doing over the last few weeks is getting different peat-free composts and potting mixes, as well as ones I've used in previous years to make a little video. Now, during the lockdowns, I discovered chat moss, which was a huge, vast peat bog on the west side of Manchester towards Warrington. And over the last 50-60 years in particular, this has been heavily extracted for horticulture. When we think about going to the garden centre and getting things in for our gardens, we think, oh, this is a really sort of environmentally friendly, naturally friendly thing to do. But we don't take into account like the mileage used for bringing stock into the garden centre and then taking it on, the amount of plastic that goes into gardening, like the pots, the little labels, and in particular peat. When I first started gardening, I'd buy loads of peat compost and was very unaware of the impact that using peat in domestic horticulture, and obviously for commercial horticulture too, was having. Peat is a fantastic carbon sink, and the removal of these peat bogs for horticulture not only lets that carbon back out in to the environment, but also reduces the ability for it to be stored. Now, peat is formed at about 1 millimetre a year. Nearby here, chat moss, and in particular little Walden moss, that has been reduced by about 8 metres in particular over the last 50-60 years. So you've got like 5,000 to 8,000 years of formation of peat ripped out and destroyed. I'm going to drop in some little pictures and videos of little Walden moss here, and one that I filmed largely last December, and you'll appreciate the size and the beauty and the biodiversity of these reserves, and that how by using peat products for our gardens, for what we feel and think is a sort of naturally friendly thing to do, is actually the impact that is having. So I want to talk through a few different potting media that I use and I'm going to be trying out in my own garden and in my cacti and succulents, which I like to do. Just to say, none of the products that I have in this are sponsored. This is all my own purchased stuff. Now, if you have products that you use which you know make good substitutes for peat-free gardening, add a comment, interact, and let me know and let other people know, because I will be doing follow-up videos for this. What I also wanted to add is, if peat forms at 1 millimetre a year and you see reduced peat products, if it says taken from a sustainable source, I question that, because like if peat forms at 1 millimetre a year, well, just think that is a lot of years to make a bag of compost. So, is there really such thing as a sustainable peat source? It's not a product you can grow and add more of each year unless you actually just keep the peat bogs and don't use it for gardening. So we were using non-peat products 50-60 years ago, and then it became much more of an accessible resource for the domestic user. So people were using non-peat products before then, and obviously we have diversified in what we have available now. So let's just think about this. Now, I'm particularly fond of cacti and succulent, and this one I'll be putting it with my own cacti and succulents later on. This one says it's peat-free, cactus and succulent focus repotting mix for healthy, vigorous growth and flowering. $2.99 for a 2 litre bag. So let's have a quick look at this. I suspect it, oh, that's very fine. That is actually really, really fine. So I've got some small mother-in-law's tongues, which I want to repot, and that will be quite a good addition to that, because the compost that's coming is very loamy, and that's very fine. A favourite to improve drainage and in the soil, as well as when you're putting it next to cacti and succulents, is to take the water away from the base, is your Alpine Grit. So your RHS Alpine Grit, horticultural grit, and then you can see that's nice stuff, help drain it away. This is an old bag of Gro-Sure seed and cutting compost. This is an old one that I have, and percentage of peat in this compost is like 85% or so. I do have some little cacti and succulent offshoots and break-offs that I want to grow on, so I will mix that with a little bit of the grit for a very fine drained growing compost. Here I've got Westland cacti and succulent potting mix. It doesn't comment on the peat content on here. It's with ceramis, is that how you say it? Again, $3.99. Again, this is quite loamy, quite fine and fibrous stuff. So again, actually might be a better one for the mother-in-law's tongue that I bought, and one of my little, I think, Opuntia cacti. Something I do to help keep or reduce use of new compost is when I have to repot and my old cacti top dressings and stuff gets mixed up, is just to bag it up and then I can put it in to help drainage and grit. I've got Levington peat-free multi-purpose compost. Again, this is very fibrous. This does look like one of the better peat-free composts I've used. I bought this at a garden centre on the north-west side of Crewe, and again you can see, and that's fine, fibrous, a bit of grit in it. Made with John Innes, with loam, grit and fertiliser, supposed to give good roots. This is a potting medium I've been trialling for a few years, or I haven't tried it for a few years, but I tried it many years ago. It is Coir, like your coconut husk, which you can buy in blocks, and it you put it in water and soak it, and it expands. Just by itself, I have found this absolutely awful, but mixing it in with other composts and grit, it performs quite well. And you can see it's nice brown, and as you'd expect, fibrous feel to it. So Coir, I will use this and mix it in with other things today, because I've got a lot of cacti and succulents, and I've had this Coir for quite a while, and I'd like to get it used. What I like to do for enriching soil structure is reuse old year's compost. So this is last year's 2020's tomato grow bags, and it's pretty well spent, but I will use this to put into the soil here. The garden's really nice, but the soil is really heavy. I inherited this garden when we moved in 2 years ago, and I really want to improve the soil. So I'll be digging this into the clayey soil, which freezes hard, gets really, really wet, and you can see the water sitting in it, and gets slippery and cloyy when it's really, really wet. So old grow bags, old fertiliser for soil improvement. I also use it for putting in pots to help bulking up material, and then making sure that the new layers that go in to a reasonable depth is new compost with fertiliser or added material to help improve the feed for the new plants. Speaking of old stuff, this is domestic kitchen compost from like 15 years ago. Thankfully I was able to go and retrieve some from where I used to live, and there was a massive amount of kitchen compost, and I lifted the whole thing, bagged it all up. So this is your rotted vegetable matter kitchen waste. You can still see there's eggshells in there and a bits of wrapper. That's really good organic rich material, which again I'll be using to dig into the garden in places, as well as putting into pots and improving substance. But this is really, really good stuff. So get composting your uncooked vegetable and fruit waste from the kitchen, because it does make brilliant stuff. Something I've come across in the last few weeks as an additional potting medium for your cacti and succulents and some houseplants is very particular sorts of cat litter. Dust free. This one from Tesco here in the UK has to be low dust or dust free. Is allegedly really fantastic as a potting medium for your cacti, succulents and some houseplants. So I bought some of this for the first time last week in my life, cat litter, and we'll be trialling this. There is another variety from a UK chain called Pets at Home. It may be available at other retailers too, I do not know. But this is lightweight. It's a little bit dusty, but it's supposed to be really very good for your cacti and succulents. So I will be mixing this with some compost and using it as a top dressing to help drain water away from being in touch with succulent leaves and cacti bases to help prevent rot there, and look forward to giving it a try. So who'd have thought it, cat litter, potting medium. I had a good trudge around the UK DIY and gardening chain B&Q. Couldn't find what was labelled as peat-free, so I went and asked, and at the moment their peat-free products are the Good Home brand multi-purpose compost, 100 litres, and as a member of staff that told me it's peat-free, but you have to really look. I'm wobbling the camera everywhere here. Peat content 0%, so I'll be trialing this out this weekend. Let's just have a look what it looks like. I like to open these bags considerately because they can actually make for good temporary pots. Again, this is a very fibrous, very loamy. So again, there's your peat-free stuff from B&Q, which I know a lot of UK folk will shop from. Again, I'm not being paid to comment or advertise any of this. This is all spent with my own money. So you can see there's wood in there. So anyway, and finally, this is Melcourt Garden and Landscape, endorsed by the RHS, which does add weight and credibility. Peat-free tub and basket. And again, this looks very similar to the others. I think I fancy less woody. You can see that's a nice brown, crumbly texture. Nice drainage in that. But how it performs with water retention and allowing root growth. That's one of the main problems I've had with the peat-free products, is the roots don't seem to form so well. But I haven't tried peat-free gardening as a dedicated thing probably for about 10 years, having learnt about the peat bogs that are nearby, chat moss, little Walden moss, and many other mosses between Warrington and Manchester. It's a resource we really do need to protect and grow and restore, because gardening, domestic gardening, is helping strip these carbon sinks, these wildlife reserves, these biodiverse environments. And I think many of us garden because it gives that sense of connection to nature, that grounding, no pun intended. But we're helping destroy some of the environment, and we're trying to reduce the impact of gardening, and every little bit helps. And there's lots of people doing their own little contributions that are going to help make something of a difference. To help feed soils, I do use a number of products, and this is one that I've used time and again. It's your pelleted chicken manure, and it don't half stink, but it's really good stuff. I'm going to keep it away from the dog though, because I think he's very interested in eating it. So when you're using old compost, organic material that may have had some of its nutrients used by plants, and you put it back in the garden, what do you use to help improve the nutrient content of that soil? Let me know, add a comment. Thanks for watching. There will be more gardening and plant related videos from time to time, and maybe ones on my garden as it goes through the seasons. Something I've been wanting to do for some time. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you've enjoyed this, and any particular kind of videos or subject you'd like me to cover, let me know. And finally, none of these products here have been paid or as placed as an advert. This is my own stuff. On with my gardening.